trillion spending bill. The president signs the omnibus bill after the Senate passes it. Why he considered a veto. White House shakeup. John Bolton is the president's new national security advisor. We'll have the details. Today's Catholic Woman. The final installment in our series focuses on a woman who's worked at the Vatican for more than 4 decades. And March Madness.
Here we come, Elite Eight.
Sister Jean Schmidt roots for Loyola Chicago as her team advances in the NCAA tournament. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, March 23rd, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. President Trump signs a $1.3 trillion budget bill funding the government through September, but he has a warning for Congress just hours after threatening to veto it. White House correspondent Mark Irons kicks off our team coverage tonight. Mark?
Good evening, Wyatt. The president says he signed the bill because of the $60 billion increase in defense spending. He says it's a matter of national security, but the president was considering a veto because the bill doesn't provide a deal for DACA recipients or fully fund his border wall.
I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever.
The president said nobody is more disappointed than him with the excessive spending in this all-inclusive bill, but it does include $1.6 billion for his long-promised border wall with Mexico. The president calls it a down payment. It's less than the $25 billion over 10 years he demanded in exchange for a temporary extension of the DACA program. That program allows undocumented immigrants to live and work in the U.S. The president, who terminated DACA himself last year, now tells immigrant recipients Democrats are to blame.
I say this to DACA recipients, that the Republicans are with you. They want to get your situation taken care of. The Democrats fought us. They just fought every single inch of the way. They did not want DACA in this bill.
The president is opposed to a clean, standalone bill that would support DACA recipients known as Dreamers. He says funding for the wall and other immigration demands must be included in any legislation. Many U.S. Catholic bishops came out in strong opposition to the president's termination of DACA and are calling on Congress to find a solution for undocumented immigrants. Meanwhile, the president says the $1.6 billion for the border wall will be spent as soon as Monday. He says we're getting right to work. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. And we continue our coverage on the spending bill with Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Hello, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. Congress passed the massive spending bill and then hit the road for a 2-week Easter recess. The bill includes reforms known as FixNICS. It'll give funds to states that report to the National Gun Background Check Database. This comes as students from around the country descend on Washington for the March for Our Lives.
Survivors of the Parkland school shooting lobby Congress. They're here for tomorrow's March for Our Lives. The students want to ban the sale of assault weapons, stop the sale of high-capacity magazines, and close background check loopholes.
It's amazing that so many people are backing us up.
Yeah, it's reassuring. Like, it makes us realize that we are doing something and we do have support around the country, so we're creating a change.
Behind closed doors,
don't underestimate what you've done already.
former Vice President Joe Biden praises their calls for gun control.
These kids are going to change. They're going to change the culture. They're going to change the gun culture.
The students are demanding change.
I think we definitely need to seriously look at the background check system. Like, talking about it at this point is like unnecessary. We just need to do it. States need to report their convictions to the NICS system because, you know, there's potential prohibitive possessors who aren't, known.
Congress's spending bill includes money for states that report criminals to a national background check database known as NICS. But conservative Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio says it's just one of the spending bill's flaws.
I would just say Planned Parenthood gets money, the unconstitutional NICS program gets money, Gateway Project gets money, the American taxpayers get $1 trillion deficit and no money for the wall. So that is not in any way close to what the election was about.
Defunding Planned Parenthood is not part of the spending bill. The abortion provider will keep Medicaid reimbursements for now. Now back to gun reform. That's what's called a prudential judgment in Catholic teaching. That means the church leaves the faithful free to apply moral principles to this complex issue. Wyatt?
All very important issues that we will continue to follow. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thanks, Jason. Charging ahead with the dramatic remaking of his White House, President Trump says he is replacing his national security advisor, H.R. McMaster. John Bolton, a former UN ambassador, will take his place. It is the sixth personnel move involving an advisor or aide in 6 weeks. Bolton is a foreign policy expert and will play a big role in decisions on Iran and North Korea. He also says he won't be saying very much in public.
I don't talk about my conversations with the president, and I think that's important for an advisor. The president is the person with the responsibility. He or she needs the advice of their advisors, and you can't have a full and frank discussion if the advice is all out in public.
The president thanks McMaster for his service, saying he, quote, will always remain my friend. For more analysis, Patrice Onwuka joins us. She's a senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum. Patrice, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Critics are very worried about John Bolton. They call him a foreign policy hardliner. Why do you think Trump chose John Bolton in particular, and what do you think he sort of brings to the table in terms of a very sensitive diplomatic situation?
Well, I think John Bolton is a very good pick, in part because he brings a wealth of experience. He worked for the State Department, worked for the Justice Department, worked, in previous administrations, and understands what a precarious international situation we have, particularly with North Korea. And so when you look back at his career, he's been involved in positions that's dealing with nuclear arsenals and how to deal with countries that could, build their own nuclear weapons. So how do we kind of move from a one-up position to kind of a standing down? And so I think he's going to be decisive. He's going to bring a wealth of experience. He certainly will be strong and certain in what he's talking about. But as the clip just referred to, he's not going to be taking the lead and being the public face of this. He wants the president to be the public face, and he'll be doing a lot of the background diplomatic work.
Okay, so we'll be following that. Let's switch gears because I want to talk about the spending bill, which we, of course, have been covering. The president's gained a lot of criticism for saying at first he wasn't going to sign it, and now he did sign it, but says he's not going to sign it again. How do you think the president handled this situation? What can he do can he do much about this in the future?
Well, I think he wanted to send a very clear message that Republicans who are in power, in charge of Washington, although very, very minor lead that they have, but they need to be very careful about spending and spending bills. And if we're trying to be fiscally responsible, and the party, conservatives being the party or the movement of fiscal responsibility, coming up with these big spending bills and not passing budgets is not the way to do that. Whether it seemed like he teetered, I think he really was trying to just say, listen, I have veto power and I'm not afraid to use it. Does anyone want a government shutdown? Absolutely not. And we've seen what happens when one party gets blamed or another. But I think he wants to send a clear message that the next spending bill, it needs to be restrained, and it needs to balance the priorities of our nation. I mean, we talk about immigration, we also talk about border wall, we talk about domestic spending, but we need to talk about military spending and ensuring that our country is safe.
You were at the White House yesterday to attend a summit as a millennial influencer, but it's interesting because when I look at the statistics, fewer than 40% of millennials ages between 22 and 37 voted for Trump. Do you think that millennials are more on board with President Trump's agenda now that we were 1 year in and see what he's been doing?
I think there are a lot of millennials who are on board with his agenda. They recognize that this is the best economy to graduate into. It's the best economy if you want to leave your job and find a new one. And so they see that, because of, pro-growth strategies, including tax reform and tax cuts, those are really helping to boost the labor market. I think they also think that he's going to be the one to deal with some of the issues around, just how they, occupational licensing reform, or just how do we remove those barriers to getting into the workforce and dealing with the opioid crisis. I mean, this administration is actually taking a leading role on this. We saw what happened in the 80s with a generation that was lost to crack cocaine. Mm-hmm. This is a new epidemic. How do we deal with this? And so I think there's a lot of support behind what he wants to accomplish.
Yeah, and like I said, so many issues and so much more. If we had time, we could talk about, but for right now, we'll leave it at that. Patrice Onwuka, Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The teenage girl who was shot when a classmate opened fire inside their Maryland high school earlier this week has died. 16-year-old Jalen Willie passed away last night. Her mother says the shooting, quote, took everything from our lives. Jalen was shot by 17-year-old Austin Rollins at Greater Mills High in southern Maryland. Rollins was killed at the school. A gunman kills 3 people in southern France before being shot and killed by police. Now the Islamic State is claiming responsibility. The terrorist group says they targeted France for being in the anti-ISIS coalition with the U.S. Authorities say 16 people were injured. The suspect took hostages at a supermarket in Trèbes. Elite forces stormed the market after hearing gunshots. Police say the suspect was 26 years old and had been radicalized by Islamic terrorists. High-ranking U.S. commanders visit a town in Syria controlled by American-backed Kurdish forces. The trip to Manbij comes after Turkey's president threatened to attack the region. Turkey views the Kurds as terrorists. The threat is causing tension between the NATO allies. The diplomatic rift between the UK and Russia is getting worse. 23 British diplomats and their families left the British embassy in Moscow today after they were expelled. Their leaving comes after Britain removed the same number of Russian diplomats. The fight stems from the poisoning of a former Russian spy and his daughter on British soil. A Catholic priest in the Philippines who was kidnapped last year by Islamic State terrorists says military airstrikes helped crush the extremists. Father Teresito spent 116 days in captivity. The 57-year-old says the key to preventing future bloodshed is to give more freedom to the country's Muslim minority. The Philippines is 82% Catholic and 5% Muslim. The U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom is confident the world is listening to his message.
There's just so many people passionately caring and praying about the issue of religious freedom globally. This is going to happen. Gates are going to fly open around the world. They haven't yet. They're going to, because there's such a need and a drive for that religious freedom.
Ambassador Sam Brownback, who is a Catholic convert, calls religious persecution the defining issue of our day. He says it's the key to security and economic growth. Coming up, career at the Vatican. In the final installment of our Today's Catholic Woman series, we meet a woman helping Pope Francis carry out his mission. And we look back at the rare meeting of 2 popes 5 years ago today. Welcome back. In tonight's final segment in our series Today's Catholic Woman, we take you to the Vatican. Flaminia Giovanelli serves as the delegate undersecretary in the dicastery for promoting integral human development. Pope Francis created that department in 2016 to promote the dignity of migrants, prison inmates, the sick, and the marginalized. Earlier this week, Lauren Ashburn asked Giovanelli about her career in the Holy See.
Flaminia joins us now from Rome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me.
You have worked at the Vatican for 43 years. You've seen a lot of changes. And tell us what your experience has been.
Oh, well, you know, when I started to work at the Vatican, it seemed to be a bit extravagant. I must say that people that were just amazed by that. But now it's more common.
Critics are denounced the church for not giving women leadership roles. What would you say to them?
For instance, the head of the personnel, in a sense, of the governatorato is a lady, and there are 2,000 collaborators there, so it's a big responsibility. And the director of the museum is also a lady, so it's another big business, in a sense, also. So that's there are changes. There are changes. Yes.
4 years ago, you were the commencement speaker at DeSales University in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and you told graduates that God has a plan for everyone, and His plan took you to the Vatican for 43 years. Why have you stayed that long?
Yeah, well, that's probably because in any case it wouldn't have I wouldn't have found another another mission as interesting as the one that I had the grace to tackle with.
As you know, the inspiration for EWTN News Nightly's series, Today's Catholic Woman, came from a survey about Catholic women in America. Only 49% of American women are proud to be Catholic. What is your message to the rest of the 51% of those Catholic women?
Well, I must say that this is sad and a bit amazing in my view. But still, if it is like that, what I would like to say is that you know that this is the new, not new trend, not at all, but this is something that we really see that it is necessary to be, that for the church to be close to the people. I must say that also in the cloistered monasteries, for instance, you can find the prioress or the religious sisters that are there who are really very updated. It happened to me to know, for instance, to meet one of them, and I was absolutely surprised and amazed and admiring her capacity of understanding of men and women and of today, of the present world.
Working at the Vatican, arguably the most holy place in the world. In what ways does it strengthen your faith?
Well, I must say that I had the possibility here also to deepen my faith. It is probably surprising when people think that working at the Vatican are they're curious, but this is really like so. I'm absolutely sincere.
Have you ever met the Pope?
Yes, sure. Yes, all the popes. I have met all the popes, of course. But those are normally they are very, very quick meetings. But still, I must say that that Pope Francis told me something very, very nice, a very nice compliment. Yeah, yes. Because when he heard that I was serving here in 43 years, he said, "Oh, I didn't know that you could start to work at the Vatican when you were 6 years old." So he was very nice.
What a charmer he was. That's great. I want to share with our audience your book. You're an author of a children's book called La Stella Racconta una storia d'amore in rima e colore. How do you manage your time to work at the Vatican and write for children?
Yes, well, of course, but it's not, I don't know how you say it in English. In Italian, we say the dead time, in the sense that I write it or I think about it when I am driving a car or riding my bike going at the office. So I don't lose time in that, but that's something very funny. And it's a kind of a joke, you know. But finally, the books are nice. The books are nice.
What are they about?
Drawings by a friend of mine.
Oh, tell us what they're about.
They are stories. The core idea of those books is friendship. I must say it's kind of a fraternal friendship. All the books, not the first one, which is they are all the stories, not stories, but little, not poems. That's too much. But in rhymes, I say what are the persons of the nativity. So you have. Well, of course, Jesus and Saint Joseph, etc. But then the other books, finally, what to reach. I didn't know it at the beginning. I just reflecting as all in my life what I have done and why I have done it.
Well, I hope you will be our friend, Flaminia Giovanelli, Delegate Undersecretary for the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development.
Thank you very much.
Great.
I hope to be your friend too, EWTN. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
And our thanks to Lauren for that interview. You can visit her Facebook page to see all the interviews from this week, facebook.com/Lauren Ashburn EWTN. Up next, Democrats and Catholics. Cardinal Timothy Dolan writes an op-ed asking if pro-lifers are welcome in the Democratic Party. And Summer in the Forest. We talk with the director of a faith-based film about people with intellectual disabilities. On this day 5 years ago, newly elected Pope Francis visited Castel Gandolfo, a town south of Rome, to have lunch with Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. The two prayed together in the chapel and met privately. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York says Democrats have abandoned Catholics because of their intolerance for pro-life views. In an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, the Cardinal writes, in part, "It saddens me and weakens the democracy millions of Americans cherish when the party that once embraced Catholics now slams the door on us. Dolan also says his grandmother, a diehard Democrat, would be even sadder than he is. Idaho signs a second pro-life bill this week. It requires abortion providers report information on their patients, including how many abortions they have had. The state also now requires women seeking abortions to be told the drug-induced procedure can be stopped halfway through. Kansas asked the Supreme Court to overturn a lower court's ruling on abortion funding. The state's Republican governor wants to stop giving Medicaid money to Planned Parenthood affiliate. Kansas initially passed the law to end the funding in 2015, but a federal appeals court blocked it. A new faith-based film reflects on the dignity of every human person, including people with intellectual disabilities.
God sent his only beloved Son into the world, not to judge, but to reveal to them that they are loved.
Summer in the Forest highlights the work of Catholic humanitarian Jean Vanier, who founded the international organization L'Arche. The goal is to create a sense of value and community for people with intellectual disabilities. Joining us now is Randall Wright, filmmaker of Summer in the Forest. Randall, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
You said your Aunt May was an inspiration for this film. Tell us a little bit about her and how her memory influenced you.
Well, it's very easy to get earnest about this subject. My Aunt May had a disfigured face, and she was what in those days people called simple. When I was a little boy, she'd rush over to me and try and hug me, and I was very frightened of her. And that question of fear stayed with me all the way through until my 40s, when I started asking myself why. And the answer was something to do with not being prepared to acknowledge a whole category of humanity, I think. And I think I have the same fear an awful lot of other people have.
You've directed and produced this movie. Tell us about the filmmaking process. How was making this film different than others?
Well, Summer in the Forest is shot in the most beautiful forest. It's a beautiful film with a fantastic composed score. It's taking the subject as if the people are the most important. So we treat them as if they were celebrities. They're beautifully, beautifully filmed. The problem I had in filming was, of course, I couldn't tell anybody to do anything. So every story in the film was something that came about over a long period of building up trust and for the story to be offered. So I spent nearly a year coaxing out stories which then fitted together into a pattern. And the pattern is, the subject of the film really is people who felt really rejected discovering they had a home. And it's the home that Jean offered them. And which, of course, now L'Arche is an international organisation. There are 148 communities in something like 40 countries around the world.
So you describe Jean Vanier, a Catholic and founder of L'Arche. He's one of the great humanitarians of our time, as you've described him. What is it that he has done for people with intellectual disabilities?
Well, the very simple thing he did, 1964, he was the first person to rescue people with intellectual disabilities from a lunatic asylum, which was then virtually a prison, awful conditions. He took 2 men out and lived with them in an ordinary house and proved to the world that that was possible to do, and therefore he changed the care systems throughout the world. He's someone who's changed attitudes to a whole category of humanity.
Such an important message and such a fascinating story. And so the name of the movie is Summer in the Forest. Randall Wright, filmmaker and director, thanks so much for talking with us about it.
Thank you very much.
And finally tonight, Sister Jean Schmidt and the Loyola Chicago basketball team are still dancing after a win over Nevada last night.
Here we come, Elite Eight, which we never dreamed we'd get to.
Sister Jean, who is 98 years old, has been the team's chaplain since 1994. She prays with players and coaches before games and has been hugging them after. The underdog Ramblers have won their 3 games in the NCAA tournament by a combined 4 points. They face Kansas State tomorrow, and the winner will go on to the Final Four next weekend. And we will be watching and following them. And that wraps up our newscast for tonight and for this week. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back on Monday, Holy Monday, with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.